Hey, I just wanted to share some stuff that I've been thinking about and I've had to deal with in my career, and that is how codes and standards differ, particularly when you're dealing with NFPA standards as applicable to IBC or I codes. If you're involved in radiological buildings, you'll probably be familiar with NFPA 801. Within NFPA 801, there's actually a requirement that for radiological processing rooms and facilities, you have to meet a Class A interior finish. Let me show you that reference within the code. So within the code, this happens to be NFPA 801. NFPA 801 is the standard for fire protection for facilities handling radioactive materials. This is the 2014 edition. If you look at that under the definition for under the application of interior finish, it requires interior walls in areas processing or storing radioactive materials. It shall be Class A, meaning a flame spread of not more than 25, smoke development index of not more than 40. But what it comes down to in terms of how to apply this is what is interior finish? How do you define what interior finish is? And I want to show you something from the codes. I'll be looking at the 2018 IBC and NFPA 101, the 2018 version. If you flip over to Chapter 8 in the IBC and just turn a page over to the thickness exemption, what it says, materials having a thickness less than 0.036 inch, which is 0.9 millimeter, applied directly to the surface of walls or ceilings, shall not be required to be tested. And this is as applicable to wall and ceiling finishes here, not necessarily to floor finishes. Let's look at something similar from NFPA 101. If you jump over here, this is the thickness exemption for wall and ceiling interior finish. And how they define this is the same 0.036 inch, that's 1/28 of an inch. But they add this caveat here, item number 2. You have to test that material so that it proves it doesn't have excessive flame properties. And how you do that is you take a thin sheet of fiber reinforced cement board, put your paint on it, put it in the Steiner tunnel test, and verify it passes a Class A interior finish, a flame spread of under 25. So that's the difference between NFPA 101 and the IBC. IBC doesn't have that requirement. So when you're dealing with a standard like an NFPA 801, it's important to go back to your base code that you're using for building or for fire, depending on what kind of work you're doing. In this case, the building code that was used was the International Building Code. And because the International Building Code specifically exempts surfacing materials from being defined as interior finish if they're less than 0.036, even if your paint or epoxy doesn't meet a Class A interior finish based upon that Steiner tunnel test, if it's applied to a reinforced, fiber reinforced cement board, it's still acceptable. And the principle there is the difference between thermally thick and thermally thin. When you're a thermally thin material defined as about less than 1 millimeter, your profile for heat transfer looks at that thermally thin material as though it was the substrate. So that's how the equations are set up in calculating your heat transfer on a thermally thin material. NFPA 101 takes a more conservative stance. For me, typically, where I'm at, the different things I work with, we specifically omit NFPA 101 from consideration. If you're using the I codes, if you're using IBC or IFC, you do not look at NFPA 101. And there's a lot of reasons for that. NFPA 101 is a lot more strict, but in this particular situation, you have a difference in the IBC and NFPA 101. Which one are you going to default to? You're going to default to the IBC or IFC. Okay, those are basically they're the same definition for interior finish. So in this case, by applying something that may have passed only with a Class B rating, an epoxy, let's say, that's applied to a fiber reinforced cement board, it would not be justified to paint with that based on NFPA 101 and expect to have meet a particular, like a Class A interior finish. You can't do that. You can do that with IBC and IFC. So going into a project, doing consulting, it's really important you know what base code set that facility relies on. If it's a renovation or if, maybe new construction, you have to know if you're going to be invoking NFPA 101 or not, particularly with radiological facilities. Normally Class A, Class B, Class C, and sprinklered facilities, you can use them pretty much anywhere you want. There's a few exceptions. But in radiological facilities, it's always Class A. And this could bite you, and it has bitten other people in the past. Anyway, be prepared and know your codes. Thanks for watching and have a good day.